Now's the time that the focus is really on the clean-up.
Northern Rivers residents spent the weekend in the mud.
They need to keep living, so we just thought we had no other choice to take the matter into our own hands and make a difference.
We're looking at collecting toys, hygiene products, school supplies.
There's absolutely a gap in terms of what the government is providing. A gap, a chasm, it feels non-existent, the government support.
All of the houses that we've been in so far are a total write-off. It's beyond anything that you could possibly fathom.
As the floodwaters begin to recede in communities across northern New South Wales, people are now starting to pick up the pieces. Many of them, like Norm Black, are volunteers, doing what they can to help devastated residents in need.
Basically, we've just been trying to help people get their household items out of their house and get it in a place where they can even think about beginning to clean the sludge from the floorboards.
The founder of travel agency Tripadale has set up a GoFundMe page, donating $20,000 of his own money to help the community.
The motivation behind starting a GoFundMe page is, if we've learned anything over the last few years with the many natural disasters that seem to keep occurring in this country, we seem to be very slow, certainly coming from government sources, to get action and get funds and get things in the hands of these people.
Dozens of these sort of GoFundMe pages have emerged over the last week in New South Wales and Queensland, with even the Defence Minister, Peter Dutton, launching one to support the Pines River community in his electorate.
If people feel like they have no choice when they've lost their home, to set up a fundraiser, and that's their only option. And I think that it would be shining a light on some deficiencies that we've got when it comes to government responses.
We can't actually grasp how bad everything is yet. I'm right in the middle of it and I can't see how big it is because it just extends so far and wide.
Like many flood victims, Helen Coker is only just coming to terms with the destruction of her Lismore home.
I work in photography and I have a lot of my equipment in my personal home and that's all gone. I would say that it will get somewhere around the $200,000 mark.
Helen and her family fled their home, spending 2 nights at an evacuation centre. Her mother, who has osteoarthritis, was struggling.
Having escaped from a flood, been in a car, been wet and cold all day, not had food, not had her pain medication, not had her other medication. She was in a pretty bad way.
After posting about what had happened on Instagram, a complete stranger contacted Helen, offering her their family home while they were overseas.
The kindness and the generosity and the trust to let 3 strangers into your home while you're overseas.
She's now trying to get back on her feet. Like dozens of other flood victims, she's resorted to setting up her own GoFundMe page.
It's really unfortunate that we're needing to ask other people rather than the government.
Governments don't always work like they're meant to, and they don't sort of meet all the needs of communities and individuals.
We're only just getting a glimpse of the extent of damage from more remote communities in Queensland and northern New South Wales.
There was just nobody out there. There was helicopters doing what they could do, but no ADF, no SES, no one, just no one. They were completely cut.
Ross Meadows joined the volunteer effort last week, helping to deliver food drops via helicopter to communities that have been difficult to access.
If it wasn't for people like us and, a bunch of others that had donated time in helicopters and things like that, a lot of these people would be in a really bad way right now. And that's just heartbreaking to me.
Ross says he's surprised about the lack of support.
Something has to change. It needs to be improved because it's not good. And, here we are Monday and we're still getting calls for help. So what does that say to you?
I'm absolutely satisfied with the defence response and the bravery exercised by these people. The work that they're doing on the ground is quite phenomenal, David, and I won't tolerate one piece of criticism of the ADF from what I've seen.
Now, as we move through, my commitment is that anything that we have learned, anything that could have been planned better, that we will learn from that and make changes. I don't want to see any of these scenes happen again.
The New South Wales government, which is responsible for immediate emergency management, has pledged to review the state's response. The federal government has announced multi-million-dollar recovery packages with the New South Wales and Queensland governments and is providing one-off $1,000 immediate disaster relief payments.
This isn't a term deposit. This is a fund to assist people with natural disasters.
This is actually exactly like a bank account. It's actually more like a term deposit or your superannuation fund.
But along with frustration on the ground about the direct response from state government, there's intense political debate over the federal government's use of a $4 billion emergency response fund for resilience and recovery projects.
Well, the emergency response fund is a really good idea to set up a dedicated fund that's available for governments to pay for disaster recovery and disaster mitigation. The problem is that it just hasn't been used.
Does it make sense to you to have $4.8 billion locked away in a term deposit, as they call it?
If you're going to use that fund for a disaster, you're not going to get a bigger disaster than this one, David.
The federal government has awarded just $50 million from the fund since 2019 for the first round of the National Flood Mitigation Program, out of a potential $200 million that can be awarded each year. But 7:30 can tonight reveal that state and territory governments put forward more than $217 million in flood projects for funding.
The total amount sought for these projects in the first round of flood mitigation was around about $200 million. If the government had been prepared to allocate all of that funding towards disaster mitigation, it could have actually funded every single one of those projects.
The Queensland government put forward more than $113 million in projects for funding in flood-prone regions across the state, including a $14 million upgrade to its flood warning infrastructure network, which the state flagged as a priority project. The state was awarded $13 million to fund other projects, and the flood warning upgrade missed out. The Queensland Reconstruction Agency told 7:30 the Queensland government had raised concerns with the federal government over the delivery of funding, consultation with the states, and the priority rankings.
I think it's a absolute disgrace that the Morrison government has not allocated more funding to people in need. And in a very immediate sense, there are people who are still trapped. There are communities that do not have drinking water. Supermarkets are stripped bare.
Helen Coker and her family are only just beginning to piece together what they've lost, but she still counts them among the lucky ones.
Other people aren't so lucky. Other people didn't get out. And yeah, you feel gratitude for what you do have. You feel loss for what you don't have, and you know, I feel guilty for surviving. Other people didn't.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.